Welcome to Cornell Cooperative Extension and our monthly Consumer Issues Program. I am Kenneth McLaurin, the Financial Management Educator here at Cooperative Extension. Today our topic is personal credit issues, and we are pleased to have with us today New York State Assistant Attorney General Michael Danaher, and he will discuss personal credit issues with you today. Michael?
Thank you, Kenneth. And welcome everyone to our consumer issues session, where we're going to talk about today consumer credit issues, which are a big problem or potentially big problem that consumers have throughout New York State. And so that we can kind of touch on the issues of what it is and what problems can occur, and we can talk about all those particular things in the context of personal finance. Now, we've really become a very credit-based society. Back a year or so ago, October of 2014, the study showed that we had outstanding consumer installment debt, meaning you pay it over a particular installment, of $3.25 trillion. Mortgage debt is now up, or was up, at $9.8 trillion. And we all hear about, more recently, the amount of student debt that is accumulating, the higher cost of education, and people don't have enough to pay for that, so they're going out and getting student loans. What used to be, many of us thought of as conveniences, have now become necessities. Cars, computers, other types of things that a lot of us would think of as being kind of convenience items really have turned out to be more necessities, and consequently the higher cost of these particular items leads us to have to go out and borrow money to pay for these types of things. Credit gives us that convenience. Now, we've talked many times here at Cornell Cooperative Extension about how we are in addition to a kind of credit-based society, we're also a convenience-based society. Think about it. Do we have to have everything now? Doesn't seem like we delay these purchases. So in order to buy these things, we need to have money to do that. And there are entities out there that are loaning the money so that we can purchase those particular items. It's also, credit affords us a little bit of a safety issue as well, because we don't have to carry around the amount of cash that we had to before to buy things. I carry very little cash with me anymore. I don't need to have, it's a little bit more money now than it always used to be, but I don't need to have $30 in my pocket to go buy gas. Of course, back in the day, I always refer to the back in the day when you only needed $7 to get your gas. It doesn't get you very far nowadays. So we don't have to carry around large amounts of cash if we don't want to. There may be emergencies out there that we cannot afford by just handing over money. Auto repairs, medical bills. Maybe we have to travel to visit a sick relative. We don't have that ability to just throw out cash for those things, but they're things that have to get done right away, so we use credit in order to purchase those things. And credit scams can be particularly difficult to recognize or to avoid in order to protect ourselves. Lots of times in the credit realm, we don't know that there's actually been a scam until a long time has passed since we got caught up in it. We may not find out for weeks or months or maybe years later that somehow credit was used to commit a scam against us. And unfortunately, with credit, we don't realize that there is a problem until we actually need to get it. For example, someone needs to get a loan to buy a car so they can drive to work. So they go into the car dealership and they find a car that they want to purchase, and they say, okay, I got to borrow a certain amount of money to buy this car. And somebody runs a credit check on them, and they find out that there's a problem with their credit history that the consumer never knew anything about. And that is the worst time to find out about something like that. More importantly, scams related to credit take a really long time to correct and rectify. So we have to be very careful about our use of credit and careful about monitoring our own credit. One of the big issues related to credit, one of the foundation issues related to credit frequently is identity theft. Identity thieves steal our good name, steal our credit, and then go out and buy things in our name, us not even knowing about it many times, and leads to many types of problems. Identity theft is the largest financial area where fraud occurs with credit, that we oftentimes take credit for granted. We just think it's out there. I can always use this credit card. I can always go out and get this loan. I can always go out, and that it'll always be there when I need it. We receive credit applications all the time. I receive them in the mail all the time. We're starting to get them by email, credit applications, and we don't really think twice about it because it just happens all the time. So we have that readily available to us. We need it for car loans, car repairs, maybe new home purchases. Now, in this day, it's becoming important that we have credit for getting student loans, something that I'm going through now, but I'm near the end, thankfully. So how does the identity theft occur as it relates to credit? As we talked about initially, we're a very convenience-based society. It was always back in the day that in order to get the loan, I remember going with my parents to get my student loans back when I was in school, and we went down to the bank, and I sat with the banker, and my father said, here, sign this thing, sign that thing, and okay, so I would just sign them. Now I use my own personal example because I like to use those for real life instances. I have some student loans for my children, and I have never gone to a bank to get the student loans. You get there's federal student loans that you go on. You have to go online. You have to fill out the FAFSA form. For all parents who have kids going to college, they know about the notorious FAFSA form that you have to fill out. And then you find out from the school how much you would be getting in federal student loans, and you can do it all online, and you fill it out, and you sign the master promissory note and all that. You get that turned in, but that's lots of times not enough to cover the cost of room, board, tuition, and all that other things. So you have to get additional loans, and it may be through different government grants or through loans. And then there's these things called Parent Plus loans or plus loans, which are outside the realm of the federal student loan system, and there are private lenders out there that will lend money. And I receive emails all the time from lenders who are willing to lend money to pay for college educations. So there's very little face-to-face contact anymore as it relates to any types of loans, whether it's student loans or anything else. Also, when we make purchases, we are evolving to less face-to-face contact. Where you used to go into the store, you used to buy the thing, you talk to the salesperson, they show you the item, you look at, you kick the wheels, and you go ahead and buy it. Now we're purchasing things over the telephone, over the internet. We're seeing items that are offered for sale on the television, and we just call the 800 number. as far as finances go. We don't go to the banks as often as we used to go to before. I've been reading stories in different journals that are out there about how in some instances banks are now setting up, and this is more in major metropolitan areas, where there are some banks that don't have any tellers. They have set up a small operation in a metropolitan area where it's almost like a coffee shop or where you have bank kiosk, where you go up to the machine to do your banking transaction, and you can have a cup of coffee and sit in a chair and things like that. But it's more kiosk related, and then they have more greeters that are there. And I for those in a more rural area that usually have banks that are manned by personnel, I'll give you the example. It's similar to going into your local grocery store, which we've all seen those, that have the self-serve checkouts where you just put your item down and weigh it or scan it yourself and put it in. And they have the one person that sits stands at the desk near where the self-service checkouts are. And if you have a problem with your checkout, they'll come over and say, oh, you need to do this or that. Well, that's been morphing a little over into the banking industry, where they have that one representative there that can help you manage the kiosk, but it's becoming less of a face-to-face relationship. And I don't say that that's any better. It may not be better. Me, my old-time self, I don't necessarily think that it's better from a customer perspective, but it's a fact of life that's what is happening. And for some people, it's just as easy to go into a kiosk and do it and boom and be out. And it is in some respects for me with banking transactions, because I will frequently do my banking in an ATM machine, whether it's depositing checks or whether it's withdrawing money or do any of that. It's just simpler for me to just go hit the machine, get the two checks into my account or withdraw money, than to go into the bank and fill out the withdrawal slip or the deposit slip and wait in line and get to the teller when I could just do it quickly in a machine. So we're having less and less face contact that we used to have with even bank representatives. But in order to get through this convenience, in order to get these things done right away, there are certain things that we need to do in order to facilitate that. And one is that we have to give up more and more of our personal information in order to avail ourselves of that convenience. Social security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, PINs and passwords, dates of birth, addresses, mother's maiden names, employment information, especially when you're talking about credit, when you have to go out and get a loan and we want to do it very conveniently. We don't have to sit down with somebody. We don't want to set up an appointment. We want to do all that. We just want to go online. And our younger people are becoming more potentially victimized by these things, because when you think about it, their entire life has been the computer age. They have grown up with computers. Those of us my age, we didn't have computers through my education years and into my early professional years. And so we knew what it was like before that. But for those younger people, that's their life. That's how they live. That's how they communicate. That's how they transact any of their business. Drives me crazy. And I ask my kids, do you ever sit down and balance your checkbook? No, I don't do that. So, well, what do you do? How do you measure your statement against what purchases you've made or what withdrawals and checks you've written? They say, well, I just go online and I look and see if it's close. So we're becoming more convenience-based, and therefore we have become more vulnerable. Scam artists use all of that personal information that we would fill out in order to obtain credit. Everything you can think about when you go to get a loan or a credit card. Name, address, where you work, how much money do you make, how much money do you have in the bank, where do you bank? All of that stuff, we say, well, that's what I expect to have to do to get credit, is give them all my history and things. We're giving that up to, in a lot of instances, to someone that we don't know. So we have to be very careful about those sorts of things, because scam artists can get their hands on our personal information, take loans in our name, get credit cards in our name by using that information. You don't ever know that someone is doing that until you go for credit and you find out that you have a credit problem. They have bills sent to a different address, so you won't necessarily get a bill, because that would trigger it. You get a bill in the mail, you go, wait a second, there's this bill for this credit card or this company that I owe something to. I don't know anything about it, and that might trigger you to start look for it. Where if the bills are redirected somewhere else, you never even know that it happened. Nobody is calling you, and before you know it, your credit can ultimately be ruined. So how do we go about protecting ourselves? The first and foremost is that we want to keep our information private. And we don't give out any personal information to somebody that we don't know. We have to know who it is we're giving the information to. And when you're on this website that you've never heard about before, you are giving information to someone that you don't know, and you have to be very careful about that sort of thing. I'll use an example. Just in the FAFSA form, which is the federal student loan form, if you just Google search FAFSA, there may be private entities that links will come up. You have to really scrutinize those to make sure it's actually the government FAFSA form that you are getting to, and the federal student loan program that you are getting to. You have to make sure that address is really for them. So you don't want to give out any personal information unless you are absolutely sure that you are at a website or talking to a person or dealing with someone who is related to the entity to which you are trying to contact. You keep your credit card and social security information and numbers to yourself. One really good way to protect yourselves, I encourage everyone to do that, is to get a copy of your credit report. Starting, I say it was recently, it was within the last 10 years or so, we've been entitled to get a free copy of our credit report each year. I used to say it was recently. Well, it's been actually back within the last 10 years. And we get a free copy of our credit report each year. That's one way to keep an eye on your credit report, an eye on your credit history, and to make sure everything that's on your credit report is yours. That's very easy to find. Those of you tech-savvy people, it's freecreditreport.com. You can go online. I would encourage you to do it in a certain way where you can get your credit report 3 different times during the year. And the way you do that is there's 3 major credit reporting agencies: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Those are the 3. They actually administer annual. I'm sorry. It's annualcreditreport.com. It's not freecreditreport.com. Annualcreditreport.com. They administer annualcreditreport.com by those 3. You can go to annualcreditreport.com, and that is the clearinghouse, the maintained by the 3 credit reporting agencies. It will ask you when you go on that site, annualcreditreport.com, whether you want 1 or you want 3 credit reports, meaning getting 1 from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies. That's what you're entitled to, 1 from each of the 3. I would encourage you to get 1 of them. Then you wait 4 months and you get another one. And then you wait 4 months and you get another one. And then you wait 4 months and the year starts over again so that you can just recycle. So you can actually get a free copy of your credit report every 4 months. And it's a way to check it. What you do is you go on to the annualcreditreport.com. You pick getting 1 of the credit reports. You have to fill out a bunch of, you do have to fill out information that's personal to you that only you would know the answers to, because they want to be assured that you are who you say you are. And then when you pick, let's say you pick Experian, it kicks you out to the Experian website. And then you can get a free copy of your credit report from Experian. You make sure that you print it off or that you download it so that you save it, and that you make sure that you review it. That's the important thing. Make sure you review it. Wait 4 months. Do it again with TransUnion and so forth. And make sure that it is yours. Make sure everything on it is yours. If you look through it, you may say, oh, this is so many pages and I don't understand it. Well, really, if you just look at it for a little while, it doesn't take much to understand. It shows what your credit balance is. It shows what your current balance is. It's within 30 days or so of what your balance is. And most importantly, it lists all of your credit. It could be mortgages. It could be car loans. It could be credit cards. It could be any type of credit related to you. Former addresses it'll show for you, former names that you used, anything associated with your Social Security number should come up there. And you want to review it and make sure that all of it is yours. If there's a credit card, let's say, on there that you know nothing about, you'll actually have an 800 number for that creditor that you can find out, hey, what's the deal? It shows that there's a credit card in my name for XYZ company. I don't recall ever having applied for a credit card or a loan with you. I want it closed out, because although it may show on your credit report that you have a zero balance, that zero balance today could be $1,000 tomorrow. So if somebody got their hands on that, they could run up the credit. And when you think about it, you aren't expecting a bill from them because you didn't even recall that you had such a credit. So you don't think anything about it. And all of a sudden somebody could run up and it could be the start of an identity theft situation. So it's, I think, a very good way to be out front on this credit issue and looking up your credit reports and staying on top of it. You can contact the creditor or the credit reporting agency if there is an error. If there is unauthorized use of your credit card, there are some protections. And the protections are that the maximum that you can be charged is $50. Provided, and this is the important thing, provided you take steps within a relatively quick period of time to rectify the problem. The longer you wait, the greater the likelihood that you could be responsible for charges in excess of $50. So the rule of thumb is make sure that when your credit card statements come in, you look at them as soon as they come in. You review every charge on your credit card and challenge the ones that are not yours. Again, the longer you wait, you run the risk of having the credit card company and the creditor say, we're not reversing the charge because you waited too long. So immediately when it comes in, start to look at your bill and charge it up. We have a good process in our house is how we handle credit cards is we keep a receipt for every credit card purchase that we have. I see all the time people just leaving credit card receipts or wadding them up and throwing them away. We keep it and we put it in an envelope. And then at the end of the month when the credit card bill comes, we take out the envelope and we match every receipt to a charge and just put a check mark next to it. And then if it comes up that we don't have a check mark next to it and we don't have a receipt for it, then we have to dig back in our brains to say, what was that? What was that? What was that? And as an example, it actually happened just last week when we were looking through one of the credit card bills. there was a bill came up that didn't sound familiar to us, and we thought, well, it must be related to one of our kids using our credit card or something, and it finally triggered what it was, and it was actually something we purchased, but we purchased it online, and we didn't print off a receipt, and we didn't write it down, and within 30 days we had forgotten about it. So if you buy something, print off the receipt or write something down and stick it in your envelope so when the bill comes you can understand it. But there have been instances with us where we have had charges on our credit card bill that we could not figure out. There have been some where I've called, you can call the credit card company and say there was a purchase on my credit card bill of $39.95 for this company, and it doesn't sound familiar to me, and I don't have a record of it. They can tell you what it was, at least in the general category of what it was. It might have been dinner out, food, or it might have been a certain general area of purchase, a sporting good purchase or something like that. And then you go, oh, that's right, I was at this place and we bought it. Or it may be completely foreign to you. And in that case, you can challenge the charge where it gets taken off your credit card bill and they have to investigate. And when they investigate, they will then come back to you within 60 days and say to you, we're putting the charge back on because we've been able to verify the charge. It was from so-and-so for such and such. And it may be a valid charge. But it's also your opportunity to find out, hey, it wasn't my charge. I've had that happen to us. I came home one time, my wife said, hey, there's a big charge on our credit card for Toys R Us. Now, at the time, my youngest child was probably 19 years old. And it'd been many years since we spent any time at Toys R Us. And come to find out, it was a charge we called the credit card company, and it turns out that it was part of the Target breach. We had been at Target, and we had used our credit card back a year and a half or so ago, 2 years or so, that someone had gotten access to our credit card information through the Target breach, and it was Toys R Us online they went. We couldn't tell from the bill. It was actually toysrs.com that it was on, and they spent $1,800. But we picked up on it as soon as the bill came. There could have been subsequent charges, which maybe there was one smaller one, but it wasn't much. But if you can imagine, if somebody lets that go on and they have your credit card information and they continue to charge, what kind of effect that can have. So, and potentially on your own credit. I've had people who have complained to us in the Attorney General's office who call me and say, I have a problem with my credit card bill. I've been charged $15.99 for a vacation travel club. And I noticed it on my bill this month. And I noticed that I went back over my bills for the last 6 months, and I've been charged this for the last 6 months. Sometimes the company will not be willing to give you 6 months back of those charges. They may say, well, our company policy is that we will only allow chargebacks for 3 months or something like that. And then the person ends up getting stuck because of it. When the credit card bill comes, it doesn't take much to look at it. If you have that quick filing process where you can just match it up, it's just check, 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 boom, you're done, and you have everything taken care of. It's the ones who say, yeah, that looks close enough, and they just pay the bill, and they don't really look at it. It's incumbent upon us as good consumers to protect our credit, and we do so by being vigilant about these sorts of things. The focus we sometimes, as far as credit goes, the focus we sometimes have is just getting the money or just getting the credit. That's all we care about. As long as we get it, we're fine. But we have to understand that just getting the credit and just being able to buy something is not being a wise consumer choice. There are a lot of things that go into being a good consumer. One is the proper use of credit. as we need it more and more, we have to be better about protecting ourselves so that when we need it, we can use it. And some of the things that we need to be concerned about when we're being a good consumer is to understand what credit is. All credit is a loan. You may have a little piece of plastic that you can then go into the store and use and buy things with it, and everything's fine. But what you're really doing is getting a loan. All credit is a loan. And there are certain aspects of the loan that we have to understand. We have to understand that there is a price associated with getting these loans, getting a credit. What's the price? The price is the interest that we're charged for getting that loan. It can be with credit cards. It could be, I've seen interest rates of 30% on credit. And some would say, well, how could that possibly be? Well, that could be the interest rate that's being charged. There could be other costs and fees associated with getting a loan. Origination fees, they call them, which are just fees that you have to pay, loan processing fees, all those sorts of things. And sometimes, I know from experience and being involved in the business as long as I've been involved in, that a lot of times consumers are only focused on one thing, and that is, how much is my payment? How much is my payment? But that shouldn't be the focus if you're a good consumer, because just how much you're going to pay is really not the most important thing. The most important thing is how much am I going to pay over the whole length of time that this loan credit obligation is out there. So there are certain things that we need to take into account in getting loans. One is what are the minimum payments? What's our payment that we have to do? What are any fees that are associated with it, origination fees or any other fees on top of it? What happens if we don't pay when it's due? Because those are significant expenses associated with it. How much of that minimum monthly payment is actually going to go toward how much I owe? In other words, out of that $35 a month, how much of that goes to pay the $5,000 obligation that I have? What is the interest rate that's being charged? Because credit is a function of three things: the length of time that you are paying it, the interest rate that you're being charged, and how much you're paying. Those are the three things that all come into it. And some of us only focus on how much we have to pay each month. But the length of time that we have to pay is also important. So if a consumer does not understand any aspect of credit, whether it's the interest rate or how long they have to pay it or any of those things, they need to ask questions so that they thoroughly understand it. Credit can be all credit is not the same. It can be all over the ballpark. For example, there are some outfits out there. I know that it's in the furniture industry or higher cost consumer item area. It could be electronics as well, where some places to entice you to buy because you got to have it right now. You can't wait till you save up the money to buy it. They will say to you, here's what you have. You have 3 months free, interest free. So you don't have to pay us anything. As long as you pay the debt off in 3 months, there's no interest whatsoever. And you think, wow, that's a great deal. You need to know more, though, such as, what if you don't pay it in the 3 months? Or longer. Sometimes no payments. You'll see toward the end of a year, they'll say, buy this item, and there's no interest due until January of the following year. A year from now, a year and a month. You buy it in December for the holidays. You don't have to pay interest again. You don't have to pay anything on it until January of a year later. Well, if you don't, you have to understand, if you don't pay that by the deadline, what happens? And a lot of those products, although you made all of the payments, let's say you bought something for $5,000 and you had interest at 10%, which was $500. That's pretty significant. But you were meticulous and you had interest free for a year. And if you paid it off in a year, all you do is pay $5,000. Say, wow, that's a pretty good deal. I pay $5,000 and I have the use of my money all year long and I finally pay it off then. These products frequently say that if you don't pay it off entirely by the end of that year, the full interest for the full amount you paid, the interest on the $5,000 is then due and owing. So you could have paid everything for the 12 months. You owe $100 at the end, and something happened, you had to get a car repair, and you didn't have the $100. So you couldn't pay it off. This product could say, well, now you owe us $600. You owe the $100 that you still had due to us, and you owe all the interest on the $5,000 for the entire year. And that's so unfair. I paid you all the way through. It's just $100. I should only owe you $10. That's 10% on the $100. No, because you didn't understand what the credit offer was. So the important thing to understand is all the terms. Don't just focus on the minimum payment that's due, because we are now seeing car loans that are being offered that are in the 7 to 8 year time frame. That was unheard of 20 years ago. You had 3-year car loans back then, maybe 5 years. Now they're stretching out longer. So what does that do? Well, it makes your payment a little bit lower. But if it makes your payment a little bit lower, in the total grand scheme of things, you're paying a lot more money over 8 years than you would have paid if you just paid it over 5 years. And so as a good consumer, it doesn't matter to me so much as to which one you choose. The important thing is that you understand that there are these options available that can get quite expensive. If you stretch a loan from 5 years to 8 years, it could cost you thousands of dollars. And if you're only focusing on the minimum payment, that's not something a good consumer would do. You'll go in to buy a car, and lots of times the car dealer will say to you, well, how much can you afford each month? And they want you focusing on the monthly payment, because they can manipulate's probably a strong word, but they can adjust the loan itself by the interest rate and the length of the payment to bring your payment down to that much, but it may be stretched over a longer period of time where out of pocket you're actually spending more money than you would have otherwise done. So the people have to be aware of the interest rate, the length of time being paid, and how much has to be paid. Also be careful of, especially with credit cards, introductory rates. They may say 0% interest for 6 months. Well, that's fine, as long as you can pay it off in 6 months. Find out, being a good consumer, what happens after the 6 months. Check out with credit cards, you know how, I think all of us have had this. You have that robocall that tells you, hey, there's no problem with your credit card, but we have a way to help you lower your interest rates and things like that. Be very careful about those sorts of things, because there are different aspects to credit cards. Some people think, well, here is a credit card with an introductory offer of 1% for 6 months. And you think, wow, I've got a credit card that's 10%. I'll just transfer the balance from that credit card onto the new one and reduce the interest rate to 1% for 6 months, and I'll be very crafty about that. Lots of times, those introductory offers don't apply to balance transfers. Lots of times, those interest rates do not apply to cash advances on your credit card. Lots of times, that introductory rate only applies to new purchases that you made. So there are really three aspects to your credit card bill, and you may have interest rates that are different for each one. There may be an interest rate for balance transfers. There may be a separate interest rate for new purchases, and usually the highest interest rate is related to cash advances. So you have to be very careful to understand, okay, what does that interest rate apply to? You have to also understand, if I make a payment each month, what does that payment go to? If I took cash advances, I had balance transfers, and I had new purchases, and I pay $100, well, how is that $100 allotted? Under the law now, never used to be this way, but under the law now, they're supposed to apply the payment to the highest rated interest rate item. And you need to be aware of that and make sure that that's taking place. And rather than what they happened in the olden days, they used to apply it to the lowest amount of interest rate, and you would still accumulating the full higher interest rate on other purchases. So there's new things that are changing, but we need to be vigilant about those sorts of things. We have a law out on the books called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which deals with the reporting of our credit. And it's very detailed, it's very complicated, but there are certain things and safeguards that are in place that are there to protect us. One is that it keeps our information private. Credit reports can only be accessed for certain designated purposes. One is with written permission. So you have to give written permission to have somebody. I can't just go and look up somebody's credit report, nor can someone else just go out and get a copy of your credit report. But you can give somebody permission. And when we apply for credit, we usually are giving people permission to go and check our credit report. Also, if someone is collecting a debt, if we owe a debt, they can get a copy of our credit report. A prospective employer can get a copy of our credit report. Some prospective landlord can get a copy of our credit report. But there must be a legitimate reason for somebody to get a copy of our credit report, or it's a violation of the law. We all receive these pre-approved credit offers in the mail, and we say, how did they know to give me this? Well, the way that gets done is the person who's offering credit doesn't really know who you are. What they'll do is they'll send to the credit reporting agencies, the major credit reporting agencies, say, okay, we want to offer credit to certain people that fall within these broad demographic characteristics. Income over a certain amount, debt ratios of certain amount, or things like that. And then so that the credit reporting agencies would just spit out the people that would fall within that demographic area. Won't give them your credit report or anything like that. It just give people who fall within that demographic will receive this solicitation. And you'll notice there's always an asterisk next to pre-approved credit offers. Read the small print where the asterisk goes to, and you'll see that it's really a disclaimer that says it's really not an offer of credit. It's based on verification of yourself's actual credit, because all they do is have a broad category of all these people. You can follow up with that, and then once you follow up with that, they will actually get a copy of your individual credit report if you want to get a loan. Also, there are other provisions of the Fair Credit Reporting Act that if you get an adverse determination, you apply for a loan and you don't get it, you have the right to get a copy of your credit report for free. That's on top of the annualcreditreport.com that we talked about earlier. You are entitled to get a free copy of your credit report within 60 days. If you request it within 60 days. So you get a letter, you were denied a car loan, and then within 60 days, get a free copy of your credit report. And you are to get a notice if you've been denied credit, that you have that right to get a copy of your credit report. You have the right to challenge any inaccurate information that's on your credit report. And you notify, if you've been a victim of identity theft or had a credit problem, if you notify one of the 3 credit reporting agencies, they're obligated to notify the other 2, but you have the right to notify all 3 as well. I would say you should also notify the creditor who's listed on your, let's say, listed on your credit report that says, or listed on your credit card bill that you owe money, or there's something on your credit report that shows that you owe money that you don't think you owe. You have the right to notify that creditor. And again, the credit reporting agency has 60 days to investigate and remove it if they cannot verify. Let's morph over. Let's assume for the moment that you do have credit, but you ran into a few problems. And so you have somebody who might be chasing you down, those dreaded debt collectors. There's actually a law that protects you in those circumstances as well. It's called the Fair Debt Collection Act. And so suppose you have a problem with somebody, with paying somebody back. First and foremost, you do have the obligation to repay. There's nothing that's going to limit that obligation. You have the obligation to repay, so you have to pay it back. However, you have the right not to be subject to harassment. And the Fair Debt Collection Act covers that. There are certain parameters. One is they may only contact you between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. They can't be calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, you owe X number of dollars. They can't contact you at work if they know it bothers you or your employer. So if it's interrupting your work day and your employer has a prohibition against contacting you at work, if you notify the debt collector that you can't be notified at work, they must stop. They can only contact third parties such as your neighbors or anyone, family members and those sorts of things for the sole purpose of locating you. So the proverbial debt collector who's calling the neighbor saying, hey, Joe Smith next door, he owes us money and we want him to pay, and go over and tell him to call me, kind of thing. That's harassing, and that is against the law. The only reason they can contact a third party is to see if they can locate you. So one of the things that you can do for somebody that you got tight, you couldn't pay bills or things like that, keep your address and contact information up to date with the creditor, because then that prohibits them from going around saying, we're trying to locate John Smith. Did you have a telephone number for him or anything like that? Also, they're prohibited if they do contact a third party. They can't tell them why they're contacting you. But you can surmise why you're being contacted. If somebody calls you looking for somebody else and they can't tell you what it's about, you probably have a good idea, because it's probably an outstanding debt. But the only reason why someone else could be contacted is to locate you. And if they know where you are and they know how to contact you, it is harassment to start contacting others. Also, if you notify them in writing that you do not want to be contacted, they must cease contacting you. Remember, you must notify them in writing. So if you tell a debt collector calls you on the telephone and you say, I want you to stop calling me, the Fair Debt Collection Act really doesn't kick in until you have notified them in writing. So if you do not want them to be calling you on the telephone because they're persistent little buggers, you would notify them in writing, keep a copy for yourself, and that if they would then contact you on the telephone after you've notified them in writing, that is actually a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act and can result in significant penalties to the debt collector. So other prohibited practices, they're prohibited from making threats or violence. They're prohibited from implying that they're attorneys or government representatives or law enforcement. If they are prohibited from threatening you with things that they don't intend to do. For example, I can tell you right off the bat, if somebody comes and threatens you and says, we're gonna sue you and we're gonna garnish your wages and all that, and you owe them $25, it's very unlikely they're gonna go to the expense of doing those sorts of things, and that kind of a threat could be perceived as being in violation of the Fair Credit Report or the Fair Debt Collection Act. It's illegal to send you papers that look like legal forms when they are not. Sometimes in the past, debt collectors have sent pseudo summons and complaints with a cover letter saying this is the kind of paper that you're going to be served with if you don't pay this debt. That's illegal. You can't send what look like legal forms. They can sue you. They have every right to sue you. You owe the money, so they have the right to sue you. But they can't threaten you with arrest. Back in the olden days, back in the chariot days, there used to be debtors' prisons where people could actually be locked up because they owed money. And when you think about it, what purpose did that serve? Because you had no way of ever earning money to pay the debt if you were locked up. But there used to be. There is no such thing anymore. Hasn't been for eons and eons. So you cannot be threatened with arrest. So those prohibited activities, if any of those happen to you, you are immediately one of two things you're thinking. One, they're violating the law because it's a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act. Or two, it's a scam. And we are hearing about scams that are out there from potential debt collectors, one of which is the IRS. People have been flooded with telephone calls from these individuals who are claiming they're with the IRS, that you owe a debt and that you'll be arrested or other bad things will happen to you if you don't pay that debt. It is a scam. The IRS is not calling people collecting debts. They will do things in writing. So if you receive one of those calls, hang up. It's untrue. And don't be swayed by it. Somebody calls you and says, we have somebody that's going to arrest you, or we're going to sue you, or those sorts of things. One, the arrest is illegal, so it's not happening and probably a scam. Or two, if a debt collector calls you and says, well, you'll be sued, people get like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sued. They have the right to do that. If, in fact, you do owe the debt, they have the right to sue you. So don't get upset and start doing crazy things and all of that. Your response should be, well, you have to do what you have to do, because they may have the right to sue you to collect an outstanding debt. Don't be intimidated or anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. Don't get all worried and upset and all that you're going to be arrested, because you will not. And if somebody has a legitimate reason to sue you, then you say, hey, you do what you have to do. If you believe that someone is violating the Fair Debt Collection Act or the Fair Credit Reporting Act and getting copies of your credit report, or that you have maybe a bill that's on your credit card that isn't yours and you can't seem to rectify it with the creditor, you can feel free to contact our office, the New York State Attorney General's office. We're in Binghamton. If there are violations of those laws carry with them a right of private action. So actually, consumers themselves could sue for violations of the Fair Debt Collection Act, or our office, assuming that we can show a pattern of repeated and persistent illegal or fraudulent conduct. Our office could bring a proceeding. The last thing I want to mention, just quickly, is there are entities out there that portray themselves as being able to help you out with your credit situations. Credit repair companies or debt settlement firms. You have to be very, very careful with the use of these debt settlement firms. Usually it's very expensive, and people end up not getting the results that they expect. The best advice that I can give you is, I know that Cornell Cooperative Extension has a very good financial programs here, financial management and things and you can check through them. There are also not-for-profit entities out there that might be able to assist you, not in paying your bills, but assist you in trying to get your credit square and trying to resolve the outstanding obligations. Maybe give you some assistance in trying to give you guidance as to how you might negotiate these things on your own. I would encourage you to avail yourself of those programs before you ever got involved with a debt settlement company. Be careful. Many of these entities are out of state and are private companies who advertise on TV, and they make it sound like really great. Hey, we'll this person is like this. They're piles of bills on it. We can help you out. And then the next picture is the person there with all their desks cleaned up, and they have a smile on their face because they took care of it. These entities can be very expensive, and in a lot of instances can be not successful. And just because you engage a debt settlement firm or a credit repair company, they have no ability whatsoever to force the companies you owe money to accept the money that they are offering to pay. So the debt settlement company says, we can cut your bills by 50%. You owe $20,000. We can contact your creditors and get you out of it for $10,000 or less. You think, oh my gosh, I'm saving $20,000 or $10,000 on a $20,000 bill. I'm going to hire them. Well, as it turns out, they can't force the company to accept $10,000 on a $20,000 bill. That company is not prevented, meaning your creditor is not prevented from suing you. Your creditor is not prevented from engaging in any activity lawful to try and collect that debt. So any of the things that a debt settlement firm can do for you, you can actually do for yourself, because all they're doing is going ahead and negotiating with your creditor to try and reduce the amount that you owe. So if you go and get advice from Cornell Cooperative Extension or any organization they might be able to refer you to, those entities might be able to give you some guidance as to how you can go about and try and handle this problem yourself and maybe rectify your situation, get a payment plan in such a way that you can afford it. It's not worth the money to hire these debt settlement firms. We've seen a whole host of problems that have occurred as a result of them. So I would encourage you not to engage those. Credit is a very important aspect of our lives now. It's just a matter of fact. It is. We have to be good consumers in the proper handling of our credit so that when it comes time that we actually need it, that we have it available for us. If anyone has any questions related to credit, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I would encourage people to come down and join us here at our monthly Consumer Issues Show at Cornell Cooperative Extension.